Look at the drink you reach for in the morning. It has its own color. It has its own reputation. It has its own promise. Yet it has one hidden characteristic that decides whether a blood marker moves at all, the marker you chose to watch. The cup is the last thing most people question and the first thing they credit. But 6 evidence cards expose the gap between a healthy label and a measured result. That gap costs you in near misses. You may buy the right tea, make it every day, and still judge it by the wrong line on a lab report. The mug says one thing, the marker may not. By the end, you will have a 6-step filter for matching a drink to a marker without building your morning around fasting. The villain here is marker blur. That is what happens when blood pressure, inflammation, oxidative status, glucose, and cholesterol are flattened into one word: health. A drink can move one dial and leave another still. Calling the whole dashboard better hides that difference. It also creates a loop. The label sounds healthy, so you stop asking what was measured. We are going to follow the trip from first sip to final result, one checkpoint at a time. This is where the useful truth lives. The evidence mix is unusually consistent in design. Every result comes from human randomized trials pooled in systematic reviews or meta-analyses. But the populations, preparations, and measured outcomes differ, sometimes enough to reverse the verdict. 6 cards are coming, built from 4 familiar drink families. That is deliberate. Green tea can fail on one marker and move another. Cocoa can look modest overall and stronger in people who started high. A drink is not one intervention when the target changes. Keep one image in mind: a dashboard with several dials under one familiar mug. We will name the dial that matters near the end. First sip. The label on the packet arrives before any result. Words such as antioxidant or heart healthy encourage a whole-body conclusion. But a randomized trial does not test a halo, it tests a preparation against a control in a certain group for a certain time with a chosen outcome. That sentence sounds dry. The image is simple. One mug sits above many gauges. Before 8 o'clock, you can perform the first check. Turn the package around and find the specific compound or preparation named. If you cannot find it, you do not know whether your drink resembles the one studied. That does not make your breakfast a failure. The product label is broad. The trial question is narrow. The mismatch belongs to the method, not to your discipline. The packet promises a category. The study measures a line. That distinction will explain why the 6th card is a famous tea that did not move the famous inflammation marker people expected. I will hold the exact marker for a moment, because first you need to see how the result travels from cup to claim. Preparation. The same ingredient can appear as tea, juice, cocoa, dark chocolate, or a concentrated supplement. Those forms are not interchangeable just because the front label shares a plant name. In the cocoa review, tested products ranged from 1.4 to 105 grams and supplied 30 to 1,218 milligrams of flavonols a day. The package says cocoa, the exposure does not. What that means practically is that one spoonful cannot be assumed to reproduce every cocoa trial. The range describes what researchers tested. It is not a serving recommendation. Cocoa also needs a safety boundary. Gastrointestinal complaints and nausea appeared in 1% of cocoa groups versus 0.4% of control groups. Small does not mean imaginary. Worth asking your doctor. The dashboard is still covered. You can see the cup, but not the dial connected to it. This is the first false dawn. Buying the studied family feels like finishing the job. It only gets you through the first gate. The mug says one thing, the marker may not. Next comes the starting point, where the rankings begin to bend. Baseline. 2 people can drink the same cocoa for the same stretch of weeks. One begins with high blood pressure. The other begins in the normal range. Their effort looks identical from the kitchen. Their opportunity to move is different before the first sip. This paired example is illustrative, not clinical proof. The pooled trials provide the proof. A 2017 Cochrane review combined 40 treatment comparisons involving 1,804 mainly healthy participants over 2 to 18 weeks. Cocoa lowered systolic pressure by 1.76 millimeters of mercury and diastolic pressure by 1.76. Yet systolic pressure fell by 4 millimeters in hypertensive people and did not significantly change in normotensive people. In daily terms, the average movement was real and small. The larger movement appeared where pressure was already raised. That is vindication if you tried a celebrated drink and saw no dramatic change. Your body did not fail the beverage. The broad promise failed to name the population. Baseline opens one gauge while leaving another almost pinned. An earlier 2010 meta-analysis reached the same boundary from 15 trial arms. Systolic pressure fell by 3.2 millimeters of mercury overall, while the hypertensive or pre-hypertensive subgroup fell by 5.0. Normotensive participants did not show a significant change, and mean pressure did not fall below 140 systolic or 80 diastolic. The number deserves respect, not inflation. Cocoa did not turn a morning drink into a replacement for treatment. It showed a modest effect shaped by starting pressure. The mug says one thing, the marker may not. We still have 6 cards to rank because a second drink creates an even sharper split between a clinic cuff and the rest of the day. Clinic cuff. Blood pressure is not a single permanent number. The beetroot evidence makes that visible without asking us to invent a mechanism. A 2024 systematic review pooled 11 randomized trials with 349 patients whose clinical pressure was at least 140/90. Beetroot juice reduced clinic systolic pressure by 5.31 millimeters of mercury compared with placebo. The headline is tempting. 5 points feels like a clean win. But the same review found no significant effect on clinic diastolic pressure and no effect on 24-hour blood pressure outcomes. Certainty was low, and results varied across studies. One cuff reading moved. The day-long gauge did not. That difference is the point. Beetroot trials in that review supplied 200 to 800 milligrams of nitrate a day through juice. That is a study range, not a dose for you. Nitrate-rich juice can interact with some blood pressure medication and is not suitable for everyone. If hypertension is already being treated, adding it is worth asking your prescriber about. Never a reason to stop medication. That completes the first pass through cup, preparation, baseline, and clinic cuff. It is the label gap of the first morning. But 4 conditions still decide how much those 6 cards deserve your trust. The marker, the baseline, the measurement window, and the preparation. Only one of them produces the most surprising result in the whole ranking: all-day reading. The property that makes a health claim resistant to easy proof also makes it easier to test once the outcome is precise. A vague promise can slide away. A clinic cuff and a 24-hour monitor can disagree in public. That feels like a disappointment. In research terms, it is resolution. The cup stays familiar while the target changes. The dashboard stops glowing as one block and starts showing separate dials. Another 2017 systematic review pooled 22 randomized beetroot trials with 650 people in intervention groups and 598 in control groups. Systolic pressure was 3.55 millimeters of mercury lower and diastolic pressure was 1.32 lower, with larger changes in trials lasting at least 14 days and using 500 milliliters. The longer trials showed 5.11 millimeters of mercury versus 2.67 in shorter trials. The 500 milliliter studies showed 4.78 versus 2.37 at lower volumes. Those are comparisons from the pooled analysis, not a home prescription. The tested range ran from 70 to 500 milliliters a day. Medication still changes the safety conversation. Now the reversal. Trials using nitrate-depleted beetroot juice as the placebo showed a weaker difference between groups. The review authors said this highlights possible nitrate-independent effects. In plain language, the control may not have been fully inactive. Strip out the famous compound, and part of the story may remain. The ingredient list says one thing, the measured response may not. I will refuse the easy exaggeration. This does not prove that nitrate is irrelevant. The review says possible nitrate-independent effects, and that is the calibrated claim. It does show why a single hero compound can become a bad shortcut for a whole food. The dashboard cover is starting to lift. 2 dials are visible now. Preparation and measurement window. Lab marker. Green tea owns a strong reputation around inflammation. Steelman, that reputation. It contains compounds researchers have good reason to study, and pooled randomized trials can test the claim. But reputation is not an outcome. In 2015, a meta-analysis of 11 randomized trial arms found no significant effect of green tea catechins on C-reactive protein. The weighted mean difference was 0.085 milligrams per liter, with a 95% confidence interval from negative 0.225 to positive 0.395. The null result held below and above 400 milligrams a day, below and above 8 weeks, and in healthy people, as well as those with cardiometabolic disease. Famous drink. Still marker. That is the myth bust. Green tea can be worth enjoying. It did not move this marker in that evidence. The tea label says one thing, C-reactive protein did not. Marker blur turns a specific null result into a vague argument about whether tea is good or bad. The honest answer is narrower. One target stayed put. So the problem is not that an entire field hid a cure in your cupboard. That bad faith story is false and unhelpful. The research is available. The shorthand rewards simple labels because one word fits a package, while 8 biomarkers do not. An honest evidence base can still be compressed into a bad consumer message. You pay for that trade-off when you expect every dial to move. The newer review proves the cost of that compression. Across 38 randomized controlled trials, green tea improved interleukin-1 beta by 0.10 picograms per milliliter, melandialdehyde by 0.40 micromoles per liter, total antioxidant capacity by 0.09 millimoles per liter, superoxide dismutase by 17.21 units per liter, and glutathione peroxidase by 3.90 key. Yet the same 2025 review found no significant improvement in C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, or tumor necrosis factor alpha. One panel moved in a split pattern, another did not. I will not call that a general anti-inflammatory win. The authors themselves concluded that oxidative status improved while most inflammatory markers did not. Precision protects the useful part of the result. 6 cards now converge. Number 6 is green tea for C-reactive protein. No significant movement. Number 5 is green tea for oxidative status. Several measured markers improved, while the inflammatory panel mostly did not. Number 4 is cocoa across mixed populations. About 1.76 millimeters of mercury from each pressure number. The cards are climbing because the match between person and marker is getting tighter. Number 3 is cocoa when pressure begins high, about 4 millimeters from systolic pressure in the 2017 review, with the earlier review showing 5.0 in the hypertensive or pre-hypertensive subgroup. Number 2 is beetroot juice at the clinic cuff, 5.31 millimeters from systolic pressure, but no significant movement on the 24-hour reading. Number 1 is hibiscus for people whose pressure is already raised. A 2022 meta-analysis pooled 13 randomized trials with 1,205 participants. Compared with placebo, hibiscus lowered systolic pressure by 6.67 millimeters of mercury and diastolic pressure by 4.35. Compared with blood pressure drugs or other herbal controls, the difference was not statistically significant. That last sentence does not mean hibiscus replaces medication. It means those trials did not detect a difference between active controls. The subgroup result tightens the boundary further. The change was significant in people with hypertension alone, but not when hypertension came with metabolic syndrome. Same T, different starting condition, a qualitatively different evidence state. Comment the one you would start tomorrow if it were already in your cupboard. The choice tells me which follow-up deserves the closest look. Hibiscus also has documented medication interactions. Anyone already using antihypertensive treatment should ask their prescriber before adding it. That safety line belongs beside the result, not buried after the excitement. Picture two anonymous morning routines. Both people steep the same red tea. Both keep the habit. One began with uncomplicated hypertension. The other had hypertension associated with metabolic syndrome. The first pattern matched the subgroup that moved. The second matched the subgroup that did not. I once assumed the plant name carried the result. Reading the reviews corrected me, but my correction is not clinical evidence. Compress the lesson, marker, baseline, preparation, measurement window. The cup does not choose the outcome. The study design does. The label cannot tell you which line will move. The evidence card can. 3 details remain before you can use this ranking safely: the exact filter, its 6 parts, and the common shortcut that breaks it. This deserves one institutional clarification. Standard advice to choose a healthy morning drink is not wrong. It is incomplete. The 38-trial green tea review measured 8 oxidative and inflammatory outcomes and found a split result. One label cannot carry 8 answers. No one needs a conspiracy to explain the gap. Simple guidance travels farther than conditional guidance. Use SIP map. That is the 6-step filter. Each step asks for a specific fact because vague is not actionable. S means select the marker. I means inspect the baseline. P means pick the studied preparation. M means match the measurement. A means ask about interactions. The final P means protect your expectations. The cup stays familiar while the target changes. Now we can turn a ranking into a morning decision. Select the marker. Name one outcome before naming a drink. C-reactive protein is not interchangeable with oxidative status. Systolic pressure is not diastolic pressure. A clinic cuff is not a 24-hour monitor. The 2025 Green Tea Review is the controlled comparison that makes this unforgettable. Several oxidative markers moved, while C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha did not. The practical unit is 1 row on 1 report. If you cannot name that row, the claim is still too broad. The failure case is shopping for inflammation as though it were one number. The easier fallback is to write the marker beside the drink on your grocery list. The minimum effective precision is 1 drink linked to 1 measured outcome. Inspect the baseline. Pressure that begins high has more evidence of movement from cocoa and hibiscus than pressure that begins normal. In the Cochrane Cocoa Review, systolic pressure fell by 4 millimeters of mercury in hypertensive participants but did not significantly change in normotensive participants. That is the baseline component. The starting gauge defines the room available. Do not turn that into a hunt for the highest possible starting number. Use your real measurement and the clinician who understands it. The failure case is copying a result from a group you do not resemble. The minimum effective baseline check is knowing whether the trial population began high, normal, or metabolically complicated. Same effort can meet different evidence. Pick the studied preparation. Tea, juice, food, and supplement forms deserve separate cards. The cocoa trials ranged from 30 to 1,218 milligrams of flavanols a day in 1.4 to 105 grams of cocoa product. That range explains variation. It does not authorize improvisation. The cupboard label says one thing. The tested preparation may not. The failure case is buying any cocoa powder and assigning it the pooled result. The fallback is simpler. Choose an unsensational product, then admit when its flavanol content is unknown. The minimum effective honesty is refusing to copy a dose from a meta-analysis. Cocoa caused gastrointestinal complaints or nausea in a small share of participants, so tolerance belongs in the decision. Match the measurement. Clinic pressure and 24-hour pressure answered differently in the 2024 Beetroot review. The clinic systolic reading fell by 5.31 millimeters of mercury. The day-long outcome did not significantly move. This is the measurement component. A brief reading and a full-day record are separate windows onto the same system. For drifters, the mechanism payoff is simple. Match cup, person, preparation, and gauge. The failure case is celebrating one favorable reading as proof that every window changed. The fallback is to preserve the exact measurement name in your notes. The minimum effective record is the same method before and after, interpreted with your clinician. Ask about interactions. This is where restraint matters most. Beetroot juice supplied 200 to 800 milligrams of nitrate a day in the hypertension review, and nitrate-rich juice can interact with some blood pressure medication. Hibiscus also has documented interactions with some medicines. The result can be promising, while the addition is still wrong for you. The failure case is treating food as pharmacologically blank. The fallback is one sentence at your next appointment. This is what I want to add, and this is what I already take. The minimum effective safety step is a medication check. Never stop prescribed treatment to make space for a morning drink. A change is worth asking your doctor about. Protect your expectations. Small changes can be real without being dramatic. Cocoa averaged 1.76 millimeters of mercury from systolic and diastolic pressure in the 2017 review. Beetroot moved clinic systolic pressure, but not the 24-hour outcome. Green tea missed C-reactive protein. The dashboard contains wins, nulls, and boundaries at the same time. The failure case is expecting one cup to repair the whole panel. The fallback is to judge the exact claim, not the wellness halo. The minimum effective expectation is one marker, one preparation, one time window, and one honest magnitude. The mug says one thing, the marker may not. SIPMAP keeps both in view. The filter is more fragile than its name. The common failure is swapping in reputation when one detail is missing. You may not know the flavanol amount. Your home cuff may not match the trial method. Your medication list may have changed. None of that makes you careless. It means the evidence card is incomplete. The cup stays familiar while the target changes. A second 2022 Hibiscus review gives the concept a useful name: baseline dependence. Across 17 chronic randomized trials, systolic pressure fell by 7.10 millimeters of mercury compared with placebo, with the largest reductions in people who started highest. Low-density lipoprotein also fell by 6.76 milligrams per deciliter compared with other teas and placebo. That review also said more work is needed to establish an effective dose response and treatment duration, so the minimum effective allowance is uncertainty. You can keep the strong direction of the evidence without inventing a recipe the review did not establish. This is not perfection, but it is not the vague pattern that brought you here. Now the title earns its wording. These are the morning drinks that move a blood marker without fasting, ranked by what randomized trials actually measured. The accurate list is 6 evidence cards from 4 drink families. Green tea missed C-reactive protein, but moved several oxidative markers. Cocoa made a small average change that grew in people starting high. Beetroot lowered clinic systolic pressure by 5.31 millimeters of mercury, not the 24-hour result. and its nitrate-depleted comparison suggests nitrate may not tell the whole story. Hibiscus produced the largest pressure figures here, 6.67 systolic and 4.35 diastolic, while baseline and metabolic context still narrowed who responded. Select the marker, inspect the baseline, pick the preparation, match the measurement, ask about interactions, protect expectations. Those 6 steps map the cup to the person, the preparation, and the correct gauge. The healthy label was never enough. 6 evidence cards expose the gap between a healthy label and a measured result. Quick pass back over the ground we covered. A drink can move one line and miss another. Starting pressure can change the size of the result. A clinic reading can disagree with a 24-hour monitor. A famous compound can be only part of the picture. That is a better morning rule than chasing the loudest label. Links to all of it are below, so you never have to take my summary on faith. The studies are linked in the description. This is education, not medical advice. Learning how a switch works is not the same as knowing it is safe for you to flip it. Ask first. If medication or ongoing care is involved, the change is worth asking your doctor about. I have a video on what breakfast does to the same markers going up shortly, and the answer depends on what you measure. If this ranking helped, keep SipMap somewhere visible for the next health claim you hear. The next cup will look familiar. The gauge behind it may not.